In a town in northern Mozambique, armed men issue a chilling warning. This is no empty threat. Death and horror are their calling cards.
Ukisikira Allah kibaru tuwa, ukimila ukiwa nemba wa kusinja.
Since 2017, insurgents have been terrorizing this region. Mozambican authorities have claimed they don't know who the insurgents are.
We don't know the reason why they're fighting or who the enemy is.
But many people living here do. Locals call these men by one name. Africa Eye has been tracking these insurgents, trying to answer two key questions. Who are they? And what do they want? Cabo Delgado, northern Mozambique. A place where the sound of gunshots and battle cries have become the norm in the past 4 years.
Iwo wakija ina maana kodi kuyao ndinoyo. Ukisikira Allah akibaru tuwa. So iwo ukiwasikia Allah akibaru tuwa. Ukimila ukiwa nemba wa kusinja. Ukiwa mwali wa kukola mkawao.
Unpredictable and violent raids have ravaged this place. No one knows exactly how many have died. Hundreds of thousands have been forced to flee for their lives. Like this woman, making a frantic call to her family from the bush, having escaped attacks in her district. This is a remote and dangerous place. Survivors' accounts are mostly how the outside world hears about this murky war. The insurgents leave a trail of horror behind them. Heads and limbs are chopped off their victims' bodies and left to rot on the ground. We found evidence of mutilated bodies and located the images to sites in Cabo Delgado.
Vieram mesmo numa listas as terroristas, uma das pessoas que ele pretendia e fazer o ataque.
The group also destroys homes and livelihoods. Locals capture the aftermath of attacks on mobile phones.
Essa é a situação da nossa aldeia Migueléu. A partir dessa estrada até mais ou menos 5 quilômetros. Está tudo destruído.
Farmácia.
Era a farmácia.
É na farmácia aqui.
E, portanto, a farmácia já não existe.
We tracked the fortunes of one of the region's oldest churches. Back in 2019, this was a place of worship and joy. Then, in April 2020, it was attacked and damaged. Some here said even Jesus was beheaded. 7 months later, a second attack. This one more devastating. Hundreds of raids have ravaged the region for years. Many more might have gone unreported. But one attack above all brought this war onto the global stage.
Dozens of people have been killed in an attack in northern Mozambique. The town of Palma, which is at the centre of Mozambique's offshore natural gas industry, has been under a coordinated attack.
The attack prompted French energy giant Total to suspend its multi-billion-dollar gas project in the area and triggered military intervention by troops of other African nations. Just after the insurgents' assault, the Mozambican army told international press they didn't know who the attackers were.
We don't know the reason why they're fighting or who the enemy is.
But was that true? Authorities had known about a growing insurgency for years. Unlike other terror groups, the insurgents have largely avoided contact with the press. Africa Eye has been tracking their movements on the ground and digitally to try to understand who they are and why they have turned Mozambique into Southern Africa's latest terrorism hotspot. There is an obvious place to begin our investigation, a place the insurgents have called home, but at the same time vowed to destroy. A port town whose downfall hides many of their secrets. Mocímboa da Praia. Officially, the war started here on October the 5th, 2017. This is a glimpse of the insurgents filmed on that day. Locals call them by the Arabic name for youth. Brandishing AK-47s and machetes, a group of men assaulted 3 police stations in the Mocímboa da Praia district. Local news captured some of the action. Some of the suspected attackers were shot in the foot and arrested. Authorities reassured the population the situation was under control. Life carried on as normal.
Tikitula kuwakamba kinu cha brinkadera tikikala wingi wa siku.
But in 2020, the insurgents came back.
Tiwa kinu cha kususuka nkamba wanu wakulaya ikiwa tikilawa kutuwa kuka manundu kulifisa wakitenda vinu vyao sidadi pale paiwa tosile wakaanza kuchemelela kwa ludini.
The insurgents wanted to deliver a message to the people of Mocímboa da Praia.
Mwangupatikana katika harakati zao, mwanguwasaidia fikra. Vesha ya tatu ati mwasa toto ya ati mwasa tilunguza kidudu pia.
Just 3 months later, they returned to deliver on their promise with a vengeance.
Itingira sambe chopo kufyaira kimbele.
Those who could fled to the bush.
Nem sabemos o que fazer. Oh meu Deus.
Those who stayed were told to grab their belongings and leave.
Sair, entrar nas nossas casas, cada o que ele tem de importante, retirar. Até às 12 horas queremos queimar toda essa vila.
Ikiwa pale mwana ile wana pia wawili wale wakitwaliwa
Apano wile tena Mocímboa ya wenye kuikala muno ekale tena iwa kinu chakuwa.
For a year, many who fled believed their former home had become a ghost town. But this was far from the truth. When Rwandan and Mozambican troops entered Mocímboa after little resistance 2 months ago, they found evidence people had recently been living there. We have discovered the insurgents had held hostages in the area. We tracked down these people whose identity we are protecting, who said they managed to escape captivity. They offer unprecedented insight into life under the insurgents' rule.
We got to a warehouse there in Mocímboa. They opened the door and I got dizzy. There were about 2,000 people there.
2,000 people?
Yes, sir. 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, teenage girls, young boys 15 to 16-year-olds, adults, people my age. However, nobody talked to each other. Even if you knew someone, you wouldn't dare ask how they got there.
When women are taken to Musimbwa, first they are treated like slaves. They cook, fetch water, are taken for military training. Then they marry the Al-Shabaabs. When they come back from training, they can no longer dress like us. They have to wear the burqa, black clothes, socks, gloves on their hands. Only the eyes are left visible.
And the children?
Children look like this, with military clothes and weapons.
Big weapons?
Big ones, like those AK-47.
Are these their children, or are they kidnapped boys?
They are kidnapped boys. They are not their own children.
We also heard reports that some hostages were ransomed.
How much money?
$1 million metike for 2 people.
Those who escaped cannot forget what, and crucially who, they saw while in captivity. Remember this video? The one where the insurgents are threatening the crowd in Musimbwa. When we showed it to these former hostages, they begged us to stop. They recognized the speaker as one of their captors and said he was a ruthless leader called Abu Suraka.
He kills. He has no mercy.
He is the real cutthroat.
These women were not the only ones to recognize him. Several people who escaped the invasions of Musimbwa da Praia said this man had long been known to them.
What name was this man known by?
Just Nuru.
Nuro, they said, had been a neighbor to some, a friend to others. Someone most people knew. This is what they told us about his past.
Nuro's mother is from Olumbe, and Nuro's father is from Maumize. He came to Musimbwa when he was a small child.
We heard Nuro started studying the Quran in an Islamic school there.
What was he doing?
He was studying.
What?
Madrasa.
He then, we are told, opened his own business.
We used to go there to buy many things, like onions and many other things.
Before he was a good guy, he sold fish. He used to buy and sell fish.
People said that after a while, Nuro began to change.
He started to become another person, aggressive. And people asked him why. We don't understand you. And then he replied he was doing jihad.
They started going into the bush. When they came back, that's when I saw him with guns.
Former residents believe Nuro is an influential figure in the group.
We heard he was one of the chief commanders who sent the others to destroy our property.
In the Al-Shabaab, he's a chief. He is the respected one. When he says something, they try to be obedient.
When the war started, Milamba caught fire and our houses burned. From then, we realized that Nuro is the one who is burning our houses. The same Nuro that we used to know.
Mozambican academic Salvador Forquilla has been studying Al-Shabaab in Cabo Delgado. His contacts have also identified the man speaking in the video as Nuro.
He was very well known locally, and that's why people could recognize him from the video. He played a very important role in the recruitment of local young people as well. From our interviews, people were saying most probably he was one of the commanders of the group at that day of the first attack on Musimbwa da Praia.
Nuro is not the only fighter that our sources in Cabo Delgado identified. This man said he was kidnapped by a group of insurgents. Their commander introduced himself.
He told me himself. My name is Abu Dardai Jongo.
Did you see Abu Dardai Jongo?
I saw him well.
What job was he doing?
His job? His job was to be the chief of the group. He's someone that has a big gun.
The name Dardai Jongo first surfaced online in 2020 when he posted jihadist content on his Facebook account. He was quickly outed by local media. Well before the Facebook post, this source had noticed Dardai was becoming increasingly vocal about radical Islam. Dardai, he said, was also succeeding in business and using his wealth to attract other young people.
He started saying, "This is the best religion for you." He knew what he was doing.
We have also learned that around 2016, Dardai became involved in smuggling migrants by motorbike. A source who only allowed us to film his hand because he fears reprisal, noticed Dardai began to change during this time.
After some time in the business of transporting immigrants from Rovuma River to Montepuez, all of his friends were surprised by how Dardai had changed when he returned to Makomia. He was no longer the Dardai everyone knew. He was a different person.
And then Dardai disappeared.
Many suspected that he went to the bush with the Al-Shabaab group.
Our sources have identified Nuro and Dardai as members of the insurgency, but much remains unknown about its leadership structure.
We don't have only one leader, as it was the case, for example, with Boko Haram or other groups, similar groups. What we have actually is a kind of collective leadership with Mozambicans, but also foreign combatants inside the group.
Just how many insurgents are there?
That's one of the questions we have been asking from the very beginning, and we don't have a clear answer on that. People talk about probably 3,000.
What are they fighting for? Some suggest the insurgents are angered by not sharing in the spoils of the growing oil and gas industry in Cabo Delgado.
It's almost uncanny, the timing of it. That here we have one of the biggest natural gas finds, and then you suddenly have an insurgency, and it's very difficult not to see a link there.
But that's not what the insurgents are saying in videos which have emerged online.
Meus irmãos, não posso ficar enganado. Nós não estamos a lutar sobre parece riqueza do mundo.
Esse é o gaji. Wafuati liku pokea kwa kanyusi wala kakibuzi. Wakati ankupokea kwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
One thing is clear. The insurgents have rallied around a radical Islamist cause.
That we are dealing with a group that have, even if you don't agree, they have strong beliefs which are linked to religion.
The insurgents wear black headbands bearing the Muslim declaration of faith. There is no God but Allah. In other footage, they carry this black flag with a similar slogan. This flag has become closely associated with the Islamic State group. The strength of the Mozambican connection with IS and other international terror groups is unclear. But in 2019, IS said the group was an African affiliate. In August 2020, the seizing of Mosimbwa de Praia made the front page of IS's propaganda newspaper. And in March 2021, IS claimed the assault on Palma. But experts say there is more to it.
It's important to acknowledge that we have foreign component linked to ISIS, but the phenomenon cannot be reduced to ISIS only. At the very beginning, again, it was a religious movement, actually, preaching very radical Islam. There is something which is very local, which is very internal, that need to be taken into account.
Former hostages gave us a snapshot of Islamist life under the insurgents.
They perform the prayer rituals at every hour of prayer. But they don't do ablution. They do not take off their boots.
They would shoot overhead to go to the mosque when it was time for prayers.
Avoiding prayer does not appear to be an option.
They told him, "You're not doing the prayers," and they stabbed him. While the others were tied, they stabbed him and he died.
Footage of the group also reveals their hatred for Mozambican authorities.
Kwa sababu wakati kipata taarifa zenu kwamba wakija wale nguruwe wakita mikutano mkikusanyika. Jeshi hao. Jeshi likiswala nguruwe jeshi. Kwa maana kwa tofauti nguruwe. Sawa?
We heard they reserve particular hatred for Mozambican President Felipe Nyusi.
They say we want Nyusi's head shattered for us to skewer, and we will eat it. We will chew Nyusi's body.
Is it possible the insurgency could have been contained before it took hold?
There are serious questions related to state institutions, public institutions, with regard to the way Mozambican state did not take it seriously in order to stop the insurgency.
There were signs tensions were rising in Cabo Delgado long before that first attack in 2017. 2 years before, in 2015, the mayor of Mocímboa da Praia was reported to have said that a group called Al-Shabaab was recruiting youth, and this posed a threat to peace in the area. He was not the only one to be alarmed. In 2016, a headmaster told local radio about a drop in pupils' attendance at his school, which he said was due to a wave of misinformation on school being useless, as advertised in the village by a local Islamist sect.
A recrutar os muçulmanos que não sabem, que não estudou, pobre.
Also in 2016, this local sheikh put his growing concerns about hardline Islamists in his community in this letter to the Regional Muslim Council. He reported an incident where a group of Al-Shabaab Islamists stunned the local Muslim community with some unusual preaching, which included the following: pray wearing shoes. Do not allow your children to attend state education. Do not use the national flag or take part in national events. Do not carry ID.
Muslim leaders, they were actually warning, and some of them, they went to see local authorities to say, look, we are facing many challenges in our local mosques. We have people coming from abroad, especially young people, trying to preach a very radical Islam. There were no very clear action coming from the government in order to fight the phenomenon, in order to fight the group at the very beginning.
We asked the Mozambican government whether more could have been done to stop the insurgency in its tracks. They didn't respond. The government has now hailed some recent military successes, like the retaking of Mocímboa da Praia. But it remains to be seen whether the insurgency has really been defeated. Peace still seems a long way off for nearly a third of the region's population, who have been forced to flee the fighting. Satellite imagery shows the growth of refugee camps, like this one in Metuji. And this one, 27 kilometers away, in Tukuta. For many, it is still difficult to make sense of this war.
So tankuona tu kubadilika dunia. Hatijua ne mfano wake.
Families are living on the edge.
Jana usurutela kwa kupata chima tijiwa, kwa kupata nanga kulalia mwana tijiwa. Tano bibi wanu tuno bibi mashaka ya ukweli.
The struggle to cope with the scars of war is widespread.
Hapa ipokaza chukukinani konta vile vindari mchaka zali na nzuku kwa kamba nitaka badili yao.
Champeni wale kana manje kwa bahila bulali. Isontoma ya marawe ya shanawe yena problem.
Many may never see their families again.
Não tenho confiança que elas estão em vida ou não sei.
If I see Nuro, he cannot escape, really. He caused the war, we left our things, we left our homes. We left our sheep breeding and my brother-in-law left his goats. We left our brick house. If you remind us of Nuro, you are an enemy of us.
The sons of Musimbwa the Prior have created a grim and painful legacy. Their parents, their former friends, and neighbors will never forget.